Good morning, everyone. Boker Tov. This is the morning after Tisha B'Av. And yesterday we spent 24 hours thinking about the destruction of the temple and praying for the full redemption of the Jewish people and all of humanity. But we must remember that while we have one day fully designated to it, every day we pray for the rebuilding of the temple and the Messianic era and redemption of humanity and all the great fulfillment of the prophecies. Nation shall not lift up sword against nation, will beat your sword into plowshares, the wolf will lie with the lamb, world peace and tranquility. And matter of fact, 3 times a day and on other occasions during the prayers, when we conclude the Amidah, we say the famous words, Sheyibaneh Beit HaMikdash, may it be your will that the holy temple be rebuilt. B'mheira v'yameinu, speedily in our days. Maybe many of you know the song, Sheyibaneh Beit HaMikdash. This is a constant prayer every single day at the conclusion of the Amidah. But the Rabbi asks the question. He says, it says in the prayer, may the temple be rebuilt, B'mheira, speedily, b'yameinu, in our days. And he asks, if we're praying for it to be speedily, surely it will be in our days. Why do we have to add the word in our days? And he interprets it this way. The prayer is, Sheyibaneh Beit HaMikdash, the temple should be restored, the divine presence to Jerusalem, God should be revealed in the world, B'mheira, speedily. But how will it happen? How will it come about? B'yameinu, the way we live our days. Our daily lives will bring about the coming of the redemption when we live properly. And what does that mean specifically? So we know that the temple was destroyed because of baseless hatred. It will be rebuilt through unconditional love, by living daily with love for one another, with empathy, with compassion, with understanding for one another, with kindness, with generosity. That will merit the rebuilding of the temple. There's a beautiful midrashic story about why God chose the location of Mount Zion to be the building, the place for the Holy Temple, and today the Western Wall, which remains. And the story is that there were 2 brothers, and one had 10 children, one had no children, and they lived on 2 sides of a mountain. And one night, the brother with no children is lying in bed, and he says, you know, my brother has 10 mouths to feed, 10 children. I don't have any children. He really needs more than I do. So in the middle of the night, he takes some bushels of grain from his storehouse, carries it up the mountain, over to the other side, and puts it in his brother's storehouse. The next night, the brother with the 10 kids is lying in bed and says, you know, I have 10 kids to support me, to work for me, to help me, but who helps my brother? He needs more. So he takes grain from his storehouse and goes over the mountain and puts it in his brother's place. And this goes on night after night, unbeknownst to each other. Until one night they both have the same thought at the same time, and they both go to take bushels of grain, and they start climbing up the mountain. And when they come to the top of the mountain, the 2 brothers see each other and realize what's been going on, and they hug and embrace. And God looked down and said, this is the location, and I'm going to build a temple of brotherly love. And I want to tell you a sequel to the story, not of thousands of years ago, but a modern day story that just happened in Gaza. You know, the soldiers are fighting valiantly and bravely, and many have lost their lives and many have lost limbs. And one of the challenges they face is that the terrorists, waiting for the IDF soldiers to come in, booby-trap many of the homes and the buildings. And tragically, many soldiers have died because of these booby traps. And many of them have lost limbs. And the one who goes in first suffers the greatest blast and explosion and suffers the greatest danger and harm and injury or even casualty because they absorbed the blast first. And so a story that came out of Gaza recently that was witnessed was that there was a unit going into a home to root out the terrorists. And of course, there's always the danger of booby traps. And the lead soldier of the unit was a reservist who left his wife and 4 children and came to fight. And as he's about to enter into the home, the soldier behind him, who was a younger single soldier who was still not married, says to the soldier who's a reservist with a family, he says, listen, let me go in first. He says, why? He says, because the greatest danger is to the person who leads. And he said, you have a wife and kids who are waiting for you to come home. If God forbid something happens to you, they will be widow and orphans for the rest of their lives. I don't have a wife and kids, so let me go first. And he sort of pushes the reservist to the side so he can go in first. And the reserve soldier with the wife and kids pushes him aside and says, no. He says, just the opposite. He says, if something happens to me, God forbid, he said, at least I built a family that will go on after me, that will remember me, that will be my legacy. Continuity in this world, but you've never been married yet, you haven't had children yet. It's more important that I go first so you could live. And the other one says, no, but your kids are going to be orphans. And the two soldiers start arguing who should go in first and that the other one should live. This actually happened just a few weeks ago in Gaza. This is the modern day story of love between brothers, tremendous selflessness and sacrifice. If all of us could live that way, to put others before ourselves, think about the needs of others. B'mheira v'yameinu, the redemption will come speedily. B'yameinu, not just in our days, but through the way we live our days. Not just on Tisha B'Av, but every day of the year. Live with that consciousness, with that love, with that generosity of spirit, of caring, of love for another person, unconditional love. And then mankind and the Jewish people will finally experience the ultimate redemption. Have a wonderful day.